Hi, Mitchell. Welcome back.
Hey, Chris. Nice to be here.
So today we chat a bit about one of your all-time favorites, Solana.
Can I just start with something else
Yeah.
related? We'll definitely jump there. But I just want to speak about, as you can hear and as you've heard before, I'm not the biggest advocate for it. And that's due to the initial days of their launch and whatever. I was watching a lot of chats between different founders of projects, and there was a chat between him and the founder of Near Protocol, and they were diving into the different methods of scaling, and they had very different approaches on it. Basically, Anatoly had this idea that hardware would scale enough that you wouldn't necessarily need advanced things like sharding. Which he basically argued that hardware would be able to improve at a cost-effective rate fast enough to keep up with user demand. But as we can see, it's a little bit questionable at the moment in terms of pricing and efficiency and network. Yeah. Anyway, we can get back to that. I just want to say that I'm not biased. Yeah.
No, I absolutely get you. But I think it's a fact that their bet is a lot on hardware, because there's also something that I'm not sure if it was Anatoly who said that or whom, but apparently every time NVIDIA increases the SIMD lanes if they double that, then the Solana computational power on the network doubles. And again, if we look at scalability intertwined a bit with transaction speeds, but still under scalability, the actual number of transactions that they can do at the moment is, of course, a lot more than Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Don't get me wrong. It's solving a lot of the issues and the pain points in the current crypto landscape.
So your concern is demand might increase to such a...
I think it suffers in that way. It's applying almost a bit of a brute force method of, we don't care if it's not fully decentralized. We don't care that it's, maybe using older methodology and tech, and that it's not maybe true decentralized cryptocurrency or crypto network, right? Or blockchain network. You can even see that in basically how low their Nakamoto coefficient is. It's significantly lower than both ETH and Bitcoin, which understandable for a smaller network and a new network. But I don't know, it almost seems like they've taken a lot of the methodology and the understanding of an efficient Web 2 and kind of shortcut to something that can compete in the market, which I mean, rightly so, because if a cryptographic network or a blockchain isn't necessarily solving the retail demand, then what are we even doing? So why arbitrarily go for it?
Yeah, that's my thoughts as well, in the sense that when I started coding, you first at a point where it's just amazing to build anything, Then you start going over to the next phase where you feel you've got to write efficient code and it has to be scalable.
Yeah.
So this becomes your big O notation. Everything becomes the be all and end all. And then after that, at some point you come to commercial viability, and you can write 7 years to find the most efficient, absolute code that is efficient and super scalable. However, nobody wants it at that point anymore because other people have moved faster and have found a lot of solutions. So I think if we look at the whole trade-offs, if you look at the triangle on blockchain issues where you have scalability, security, and decentralization, obviously they don't care that much about decentralization, but that is what impacts security
Yes.
and
Scalability.
scalability quite a bit. So I think their approach where it's different is they're saying, let's get to something that can be used a lot quickly. But if you drive very fast in your car, you have a bit less control, like network outages, which I know we're going to touch on. So I think they are aware of the compromises, but what you get for it.
I think they've gone with something known as the flywheel effect. They've chucked a bunch of money, they've built a bunch of projects. They're trying to attract the biggest user base at the moment. The pain point in the market at the moment is gas fees. I mean, I did a transaction last night or the night before, and I timed the network, timed the gas fees and everything, and the lowest I could get it down over like a week period was $25 for a transaction. So that's not going to work for retail. That's not going to work for micropayments. That's not going to work for metaverse. It's not going to work for most things, actually. So that's kind of what they're doing. They're appealing to this larger audience that wants to be in crypto but can't afford a $25 gas fee. Like, they are doing the right thing in many ways.
And I think it's not always just about affordability. I think it's sometimes just about practicality, because if I just quickly want to make a $50 payment to you for whatever reason, I can't be paying a $10 transaction fee. Then it's a worse solution than the banks.
Yes.
Where Solana, of course, the transaction fee is almost negligible. That does cause a bit of a problem, though, with inflationary pressure, because although they burn 50% of their transaction fees, because the transaction fees are so small, they are sitting at the moment with inflation of about 6% here, but that's going to decrease over time. But that is a bit of a issue that causes.
Not to mention super low fees allow for spamming of the network and DDoS attacks and all sorts of things. So as good as it is having such a low fee, it can also be kind of a hindrance. It can be a bit of an issue. But another thing is, ETH is actually a profitable network. Yes, the gas fees are high, but it's a viable business model. Only because, the gas fees are high. But in order for Solana to break even in terms of its costs and its upkeep and whatever, the cost to onboard is incredibly expensive, actually. And your gas fees are incredibly low, so you need a very large volume of people to compensate for the low gas fees in order to make the network profitable. So it's it's a bit of an all or nothing play. They kind of have to almost be like a black hole that absorbs everything to actually be a good business model.
But is it not also a factor that Ethereum has higher transaction fees because their validators needs a lot more computational power? And I think that is where the proof of history, Solana versus proof of stake, comes in. Because yes, it's higher transaction fees, so the network could be more profitable, but it doesn't help that much if you get the higher transaction fees to compensate the validators, because they have to deploy more resources. So yes, you make more revenue, but you immediately give it out as an expense. So the net profit could still be quite low, right? Because my understanding is what their basis is with proof of stake, which they basically are, except from the fact that they're at the timestamps for ordering. Because proof of stake do not have that, to get everyone in sequence requires tremendous amount of resources, where they have the luxury of being able to essentially organize by timestamps. So is it not also a case that transaction fees are a lot lower because they are a lot more efficient?
To be honest, I was following ETH quite deeply in the early days when they were proof of work or whatever. I know there's been a series of upgrades at the moment. One would imagine it's made it more profitable to actually run the network.
Yeah, and look, they're also going to have I don't know all the details, but one block validation, something that may also bring the speed down and probably the cost as well.
Well, they're bringing down the cost of layer 2s at the moment. So I think there's going to be a 90% cost cut on all layer 2s for ETH, which again, one wonders, because now that pulls away traffic from ETH onto the layer 2s. Is it that good for ETH?
Which is
I'm not sure. Is
nother
it good for its
discussion.
business model? I'm not sure.
Because you can also argue that all those L2s exist because the L1 essentially didn't
but again,
get to a point of practicality.
Yeah, well, it's that argument of monolithic versus modular, right? So Solana's gone for like a monolithic approach where basically it's an all-encompassing blockchain. It's like one solution. It's its own ecosystem. It's building its own set of DeFi protocols. It's not trying to connect or bridge or whatever. Whereas ETH is kind of like, yeah, cool, guys, plug in, like we need the help. But that also introduces a huge amount of different security issues. So as much as, I'm maybe not the biggest advocate for Solana, having fewer pain points, a simpler model often leads to fewer places that it can kind of break. So having something that is ultra fast and can run pretty much like maybe the whole financial system long term, it's better because they're less pain points or they're less vulnerabilities.
It's also one of those things that they say actually developing on Solana is like chewing glass.
Yeah, I know. I've heard it's terrible.
It's not great.
No.
So that of course is something else. Yes, there's only one chain, but developing on it is not great. Ethereum had issues, so they have spin-offs, basically, where Solana still sits with those issues and the outages, etc.
Yeah.
So we've touched on scalability and the transaction fees and kind of on the fast speeds as well. But maybe just to look at that again from a commercial perspective. Because my view on Solana is a lot from a commercial perspective, not only from a technical perspective. Because I think with my background, because I had a lot of technical work, but also I do a lot of commercial work, I always have this balancing view. And I think from a commercial standpoint, and you forget about absolute fans of decentralization and the blockchain, etc. The man on the street, which is the big market, they don't care that much about decentralization. Otherwise, we wouldn't be using banks or buying iPhones. Or
we can see people rushing back to banks now. I mean, for ETFs, people don't want to manage their own technologies and their own finances.
Some people want, and they take that responsibility, but that's a small proportion. Because if you look at what Solana offers, very fast, very low transaction costs.
Yep.
Okay, the network has been out since it launched, maybe a total of less than 20 hours, say that, which is significant.
Okay.
I don't know exactly.
I mean, it's averaging on one outage a month at the moment, but that's
it's in beta.
That's a little bit, and they're hiding behind the beta thing, but sure.
That's smart. Leave your product in beta forever.
The thing I found really funny was the fact that they basically all hopped on Discord and all the validators hopped on Discord and restarted the network. And it's kind of like, it's become almost protocol that is like the approach. It's like, cool, we're going to wait for enough people to be awake that we can all get on Discord and we can pick a block that we're going to restart the network on. Like, I mean, sure, normal networks do have outages, but the whole premise of crypto and whatever is, it's kind of this unstoppable thing. Yeah. It's not looking very unstoppable.
No, look, and I think that comes back to the fact that it's not that decentralized, okay? But it offers low transaction cost, very fast speeds. And at the end of the day, that is welcomed by people using the product.
Average retail.
If Solana gets out to average retail, and we know Visa is looking strongly, or they have a partnership with Solana and USDC and whatnot, Solana has the potential to be a first mover on actually solving these problems. But if they're constantly down, they're just going to be out of the race quickly because
even AVAX went down. Avalanche went down.
Yeah.
So it happens.
But then you have Bitcoin.
Yeah,
100%
I mean, it's never been down.
Uptime because of true decentralization.
But I think we have to look at
very slow.
Yeah, we have to look at is it a store of value, because that has to always be up. Like, let's be honest, if it's a financial instrument or like an asset, it needs to always be up.
It's also it's also funny how people go, oh, Bitcoin is too slow, 10 minutes. Then they make a SWIFT payment via the financial system overseas and it takes 4 days. Anyhow.
But I mean, in that regard, Solana is it's a utility network. It's serving its purpose. And I mean, I don't love Solana, but I do welcome the fact that it's kind of put like a fire under the ETH situation and been like, okay, well, cool, we're building something better than you. And well, arguable, but we're building something that competes with you on a different front. And it's actually showing that, hey, it's not acceptable to have $25 gas fees or 150 when the network is busy. So I welcome it. I mean,
the competition is always good.
Competition's good.
And then if we look at the ecosystem growth, so of course it doesn't help you have a great blockchain and you don't interest developers or dApps being built on it, etc. What's your views on that? Yeah,
I mean, apart from the institutional adoption, like your visas and stuff like that for payments, Solana strikes me as kind of like it's all about airdrops at the moment, and it's all about like even staking and liquidity and all that sort of stuff had only recently kind of started picking up, but everyone's kind of airdrop farming on this thing. And I mean, it's okay for the gaming space or whatever, doesn't have the best architecture for that. So games aren't really taking off like they are on AVAX, because that has like a subnet architecture where every game's kind of getting its own subnet. Solana's kind of like just this one big block or this one big thing, right? So I'm not I'm not overly optimistic about its current space. I like the current dApps in its ecosystem, but ultimately, yeah, if it's like a wormhole that's kind of sucking all these different devs and other dApps in. I mean, if things are porting across, things like Aave, and I have seen some of these bigger protocols actually make moves to put their protocols on Solana. So it is happening. I mean, even with I think Filecoin even integrated with Solana. So it's becoming legitimate. It's just
also Phantom wallet, if you look at the active users, it
beautiful
increases
user experience.
a lot. And it seems also that the actual active monthly developers or contributors of Solana is also quite stable, quite strong, and quite high. Yeah, it's not like because it's difficult to develop with it, people are not doing it, because I think they know the other benefits. And again, I think a strong draw there would be the low transaction fees, because even just developing on Ethereum, if you want to build a small product, you always know people are going to be hesitant to use it for certain things, because transaction fees are just high. With Ethereum, you have to know this transaction, I really want to do it. With Solana, it's kind of meh.
It's kind of like when I was buying meme coins. Okay, I was buying meme coins with like during points of like high market, like there was a lot of market volatility, and I kept having failed transactions, and pretty sure it's charging me those gas fees as well. But you don't care because they're so cheap. So if you keep pressing the button and it takes 20 times to do it, it's almost charged you nothing.
My big thing is all the times clients have paid us via the Solana network, it's just been such a great experience.
Until they pay it into Valor.
They paid it into USDC SPL into USDC ERC20. Yeah. That was not a great experience. And Valor, if you're watching, I still want that back. So, but yeah, it was a great experience for me, because literally the client can talk to me and make the payment, and I can confirm it's here. Bitcoin not the same, Ethereum not the same. And also, it's not the question with Solana who pays the transaction fees. No one cares. It's so low. Okay, then I guess we have to move on to the cons as well. Immediately then, centralization concerns.
I mean, if you're focused on scaling with hardware, it's a difficult situation, because if you're scaling with hardware, and let's say your network activity picks up a lot, your demand on the network is very high, so you need now stronger computation or like more powerful computation. And if you're trying to decentralize this network, what average Joe can run a node that is now maybe R500,000 or what is that? That's like $25,000 or whatever it is, right? Who can run that? And that's kind of the issue. In order to keep up with the demand of the network, you need a huge amount of computation. So it inevitably, the only people that can afford that are corporates or like big collections of people and warehouses and whatever. So you end up with maybe 200 warehouses as opposed to 140,000 mini nodes, right? So it's not the worst thing to use hardware to scale, provided that your demand is not outpacing your performance needs.
Yeah, I guess if demand gets to that point with them, yeah, I don't know.
Well, then you end up you might end up in a situation like Hedera then, where Hedera is run by like a governing council of like 39 members. There's only like 39 nodes, right? Yeah. Cool, it's super high performance, it's fast, it's whatever, but who wants to use a network that's governed by only 39 people? Or 39
but I
organizations?
also heard on YouTube, so it's got to be true.
Oh, it's got to be true, yeah.
That Solana over time will become more decentralized. I don't know much about the mechanics around that, but theoretically.
Yeah.
And then the other con that we have touched on already is the complexity. They say it's quite difficult if you're a developer or you want to build something on it to get into that ecosystem. And I think it's with Rust. You go and they say it's not a case like if you're going to build something on Ethereum, there's a bunch of boilerplate stuff that you can copy paste with Solana. You have to understand what you're doing. That's tough for most coders if you can't copy paste.
But that's for now. I mean, over time that will get more user friendly.
And it's not like people are not developing on it.
No,
due to this.
Yeah.
So maybe sometimes complexity is also a good thing because all the people who just want to launch
meme coins.
Meme.
Well,
that's
no,
the word.
Meme coins. Or want to launch solutions that are just capitalizing on the trend.
Maybe they just distracted from that, and that's clear because, of course, have you ever seen a spam drop on Solana?
I definitely have. Yeah, definitely have.
No. Yeah. Okay. Then security. So if we looked on the triangle, we have scalability, security, and decentralization. Decentralization is obviously a point that Solana at this, so they sacrifice a bit on that, and that typically has a direct impact on security. Not that Ethereum, who's more decentralized, is necessarily more secure, but it has the potential of being less secure. Do you know about a lot of security concerns?
I can't really comment too much on maybe their consensus mechanisms or like how secure the validation setup is. I mean, the fact that they have a low Nakamoto coefficient, basically Nakamoto coefficient speaks about how many validators need to be compromised in order to take over the network. So obviously a very low Nakamoto coefficient, highly problematic. So yeah, let's say your Nakamoto coefficient's like 20. It would only require 20 validators to cause issues with the network, right? The thing that concerns me a lot is basically the fact that all these validators know one another and they're able to hop on Discord and restart a network. That should be very worrying.
Yeah, so collusion, because it's a small majority. But hey, we've got to say then, if we look at the traditional financial markets, is that really better? Where if you look at the US financial system, well, how many people are that really controlled? We're not going to go into my conspiracy discussions, but I mean collusion, and that's the issue with decentralization. With centralization, you have possible collusion. Now you have a new centralized company, the Competition Commission, who oversees collusion. So you just have more centralized stuff, and that's the system at the moment. But yeah, I guess because it's blockchain, everybody goes,
yeah.
You know.
But this is the thing. If Web3 isn't solving the issue, why are we moving to Web3? This is kind of this idea of, if Web 2 is sufficiently solving all the problems, why are we moving to Web 3? So there've got to be use cases that are applicable to Web 3, and there are going to be use cases that maybe aren't applicable to
But
Web 3.
I think that's why Solana is a good bridge, no pun intended. But, because they solve immediate TradFi problems, not all of them. Solving all of them immediately, you can argue Bitcoin does that if it was faster. But you cannot easily solve all problems immediately, but solve some of them, get a lot of people on board, and then kind of figure out the
maybe.
rest.
Well, that's maybe it. Let's absorb the entire world's population, then we can decide on how we're gonna handle this network.
Exactly. Get everybody locked in.
Yeah.
Then an outage is at least universal.
Where all the VC money is. Let's get everyone locked in where the majority of the VC money is.
And the next point is the network outages, which we have touched on.
We've kind of discussed that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's there, it happens, but look.
Maybe it will get better in time. Time will tell.
Yeah, we'll see. And then competition, possible con that it's a highly competitive market, but I don't think that's an issue. If you look at market cap also, in that sense, Solana's not doing too bad.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's such a big thing. So concluding thoughts, and maybe the other one thing, no, we shouldn't go into tokenomics because then we're going to start giving financial advice.
Going into like the funding and all sorts of things.
No, but there is some. If you look at their tokenomics, it's quite
their distributions.
It's quite different from other projects and how quickly it vested and so forth. But let's leave that for another day.
Let's leave that. I mean, that's like a whole. Oh my word!
That's
a whole closet
of
skeletons, given the past couple of years. But yes.
Yeah. So, and then there's also the issue that one of the first. And I'm objective because I'm saying this. One of the first biggest investors was FTX and Alameda.
No.
So that also didn't bode very well. But it doesn't mean that Solana itself has any implication there. And I think that's also been well discussed in the media.
Yeah, that's fine.
And we passed that now.
Yeah, we're past that.
We passed bear market topics.
Yeah.
Bull market topics now. So concluding thoughts then, if you had to make a prediction, do you think, let's take this cycle coming now, do you think Solana might start outpacing Ethereum in certain senses like utility? Well, it's already doing it in utility. But give it a push on other factors like adoption and so forth? I
think, if anything, I think it's just going to raise a lot of questions for your traditional crypto market in terms of, why are we struggling with something like ETH, or why are we struggling with something like BTC? It might not flip it might not replace it might not eradicate it from the market, but it's at least offering a different perspective. And I think that's super healthy in this market. As for its own competitors, I don't necessarily think there are a lot of those in this current sphere.
Apparently there's this one chain that even has Anatoly a bit worried because it's very easy to write code in it, I think, and a few other things. It's called Aptos.
Yes.
And small market cap.
I believe Meta is also associated with it.
Okay, small market cap at this stage, but apparently it's quite good. So there's competitors. But look, if you don't have competitors, then it's not worth being in that market. Okay, so all in all, do you give a thumbs up for Solana or thumbs down?
I give a thumbs up because it's healthy for the space. I don't love it, but I recognize its importance to the space.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And you?
Absolutely, thumbs up.
Okay, cool.
I've just had positive experiences with it, and I think it is a good bridge to kind of move things along in the blockchain space. I admit there's a bunch of cons that you need to take into account.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that they're fast moving. I think that's needed as well. So, no, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Cool.